Okay, good afternoon everybody. I'm Michael, I'm come from Belgium, and in my daily life as a tester, and also here at these conferences, since this morning, I made notes and I counted the word quality 122 times. On one day, we as testers mention the word quality 122 times. That must mean that this is important to us. This is the key to our foundation, this is the key to our profession, this is what makes us testers, quality. Now, when I was asked to give a presentation on this conference, I thought about what can I tell about quality? What is so special about quality? What makes quality? Because everybody has his or her own definition about quality. What quality is for you is not necessarily what quality is for me. We have different meanings. And quality for me starts with an idea. So when I was browsing through my ideas, I had a working title for my presentation. And my working title was Software Quality Revamped. I thought, okay, that's a good idea. I want to speak about software quality. And I want to revamp it, I want to reshape it, I want to create new definitions, new ways of working. And then I thought, nah, that's not a good idea. Who is going to come to listen to a title that says Software Quality Revamped? That's boring. That doesn't attract an audience. So I came up with a new title. I cannot explain it because the official title is Forget Quality, but that's provoking. A good title is already a form of good quality. If you can appeal your audience, you've already won them for the quality. And I'm going to remove that as soon as possible. Well, that's for presentations. Now let's go to the testing world. When you talk about testing, there's an awful lot of talking about quality. I've taken a look about the reports, the plans, the communications that I get with respect to quality. Reports from my testers, reports I send to release management, to project management, to all the stakeholders of quality. And what do I see? I see a lot of documentation. I see documentation reports that talk about the percentage of requirements covered. I have so many requirements, and I have created test cases for a certain number of them, so that gives me an explanation about my quality. I have seen statistics about percentage of code covered. I have that many lines of code, I have that many functions, and of that percentage of code, I have executed, tested, or prepared test cases for a certain number of functions. That's also something about quality. I've seen statistics about the number of test cases that has been executed. That tells you something about the quality of your testers. From all the test cases that had to be executed, we've done so many. I've seen statistics about the number of test cases passed versus the total number of test cases. How successful, how qualitative is your software? I've seen statistics about defects, an awful lot of statistics about defects. How many defects do you have? How many open defects do you have? How many important defects, blocking, non-blocking, cosmetic? A lot of statistics about defects. Well, each of these KPIs, each of these metrics, each of these measurements for quality is a good expression. There's nothing wrong with them. There are a lot of books and workshop tutorials about metrics. The problem with each of these metrics is that any representation is an abstraction. It's a very small portion of the quality that we like to express. And because quality is so complex, we cannot put it completely in numbers. So we make adjustments. We create our own model of quality, which does not necessarily represent the entire reality. For me, for example, expressing the quality of software in number of defects is way too narrow. When I ask somebody to construct me a new house, I hire a contractor, and I ask after a few weeks of construction, what's the status? And that is a question we as testers often get. And he or she answers me, well, since that moment, I've used so many bags of cement, so many bricks, so much sand. That's not the response to my question. That is not what I want to hear. I want to hear, Michael, we're currently building your bathroom. Your ground floor is ready, your basement is ready, that's where we are. You want a level of abstraction. And what's even far worse than this poor way of defining quality is that when you take a look at these statistics, if you take a look at these reports, the numbers are so high. What you can say is that we always try to jump too high. I see all requirements should be covered. All test cases should be executed. All test cases should be successfully executed. There should be no open defects. We aim simply too high. This is not achievable. That's why one of the first conclusions for me was that we have unreachable expectations about quality. And to demonstrate that, I'll take it to a small test. That becomes a little bit difficult for the translators there. For us, at least for me, I come from Belgium. Nobody speaks Dutch. Some people speak French, but our business language is English. That makes it easier to all speak the same language. That makes it also easier to outsource our testing, our analysis, our development. And we often think of ourselves that we are quite profound in our English. We all speak English, we understand English, we watch English movies, we read English websites, we know our English. We are good. Well, let me do a test. I have grabbed some words that come out of communication that I received over the past 12 months. And these words, I've looked them up, also happen to be present in SAT test. SAT test is an American test for 12-year-olds that tests the grammar of 12-year American students. So let's see what your knowledge is. Anybody has an idea what this means, to abjure? Okay. To reject. Limpid. Clear or transparent. Comes from a usability report. There's a question in the back? Okay, sorry. Tantamount. Well, I saw this, I thought an awful lot. That was my first tantamount of money. Well, it means equivalent in value. If you have two options, but they're both the same. To prescribe. I thought of a doctor. I would get something for medicine. No, it's to condemn, to say no, that is not correct. Officious. Sounds for me a bit like official. Well, no, it means that you are offering something which isn't wanted. Well, I've taken this test actually in my own company. We did this, and most of our people scored 1 or 2 out of 5. Even though we thought, well, we're quite good in English. We're not. And there are more statistics to show. We overestimate our own level of quality. We think we are better than we are. One of the persons who highlighted that is this guy, Professor Les Hatton, University of Kent. And what Les Hatton has calculated is something he called the defect percentage. The defects percentage is the number of defects you find, either in testing or in production, divided by the kilo lines of code, 1,000 line of code. And what has he calculated? That over the last 15 years, the defect percentage has remained constant. So despite better training, despite better education, despite better tools, our developers are still making the same amount of defects gradually than they have been in 20 years. So our profession as software creators isn't growing. We still make the same amount of mistakes. And we just can't accept it. That also means for us as testers that we are always having a job. So that's a job security. Now, it's not only on testing that this happens, and not only on development. Take, for example, university. If you go to university or high school, there are some rules with that. If you score 50%, you've passed, you get your degree. 65% you pass with honors, 75% with great honor, and 85% if you're very smart, that's the highest honor. I've taken statistics, they come from Belgium, but I've been told that these are quite worldwide numbers. Of all the people who participate to exams, so I'm not talking about the dropouts, people who leave before they take exams, 50%, more than 50% doesn't succeed in their exams. With caution, because these are smart people. It's university level, so they've already underwent 6 years of college. 32% just passes, 10% with honors, and the numbers with great and highest honor are quite marginal. What does that mean? that even for our brightest people, the majority does not score more than 60%. 60% at university is quite good. If you want to become a doctor, how's MD? Well, you know that 60% is just good enough. That frightens me. The next time I'm in the doctor, I count the number of persons in the cabinet, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, we're with 10, so that means 4 out of 10 people will get a wrong diagnosis. That is a number of quality which is acceptable in the medical domain, which is risk-prone, which is dangerous. And we as testers, we aim for 100%. Maybe we should be aware that perfection is not within reach. And it should not be within reach. You should always try to strive for it, but you should be able to accept that you will never reach it. In 2014, there was the World Cup soccer or football in Brazil. And there was a lot of things to do about the stadiums. There were poor labor conditions, they had a lot of trouble. The biggest problem was that they were frightened that the stadiums would not be ready before the World Cup starts. So they hired extra people to build them, they had consultants running around. Well, in the end, at the moment the World Cup started, the stadiums were ready. They did a tremendous job in creating the stadia. There was one tiny thing that they forgot, that in order to play football or soccer, you need a decent pitch. So they put all the attention in the creation of stadiums, but they forgot to have a good pitch. So after 1 week of soccer, they had to replace 6 football pitches, because the quality of these pitches was so bad. That means also that the context defines the quality. If you put focus onto one thing, you can't put focus on the other thing. You should ask yourself, where do I want to put the focus? And even if you focus on the right thing, if you make good, well-built decisions, these can be wrong. Take, for example, this car, the infamous Ford Pinto. Who has ever driven this car? Okay, not many people, that's a good thing. The Ford Pinto is one of the worst cars of all time, and it's an example of bad business decisions. Why was that? Well, the Ford Pinto was Ford's response to what came from the East, the small, ecological, economical cars. Those days in America, cars had huge engines, consumed a lot of petrol, and they said, okay, we need to find a response to that. And Ford completely redesigned, with its engineers, the car, and that was the Ford Pinto. Now, the issue with the Ford Pinto was that, because it was a redesign, they hired some quality engineers. Ring a bell? Testers? Well, what does the quality engineer discover? That when the Ford Pinto was in a rear-end accident, meaning the Ford Pinto was standing still or was driving, and somebody bumped in the back of the car with a speed higher than 40 kilometers an hour, there was a 20% chance that the gas tank would erupt in flames. That's an issue. But like Mette already explained, that can also be a conflict. And the conflict was, what is now the cost of redesigning and rebuilding the back end of the car? And what would the cost be if this would happen in production? And they made calculations, they made a mathematical model of it, and the choice was, we accept the risk. We are not going to do anything about it. They've calculated both cost, and the cost of reshaping the back end was more expensive than the cost of people dying. After 6 months, 28 people died of rear-end collisions in the Ford Pinto. So they had 2 times the cost. The cost of then, after 6 months, redesigning the car, and all the penalties and the fines they had to pay. That's a bad decision, but it's a well-built decision. It depends on the context where you put those decisions to. So we can say that every idea about quality is contextual. The context defines the quality. Well, if all that is true, if we overestimate our own level of quality, if we have too high expectations, if quality is contextual, then I would like to know, and I'm sure you would also like to know, to find a means to determine quality. How can we assess that? One of the ways to do that is by introducing the cone of quality. And let's take, for example, an ice cream cone. Okay, maybe it's a little bit cold for an ice cream cone, but an ice cream cone has 3 dimensions. It has a time dimension, it has a budgetary dimension, and it has the inverse of the scope as a dimension. Now what does that mean, and what does it all come down to? If you get, as a tester, more time than was initially planned, there is a chance that you can deliver a quality which is higher than foreseen. More time means more time to test, means finding more defects, running more test cases, so you get higher quality. If you get a higher budget, and that budget means either resources, people, or tools, then there is an increased chance that you can deliver a higher quality. But, and that is our reality, if the scope increases, while the time and the budget remains constant, then it will be very difficult to deliver the amount of quality that was expected. If your boss, your project manager, your product owner, whoever asks you or says to you, we're going to increase the scope, we're going to add features to the build, and you don't get extra resources, you don't get extra time, how can you deliver the same amount of quality? That's difficult. And that's a challenge we're faced with every day. And not even is that so bad, but there is the biggest thing. This is the quality that we hope for. We do not only want to deliver functionality, we want to have usability, performance, security, all these ilities. And if we are very lucky, this is what we're going to get. Now, when you talk about quality and you talk about testers, testers are mainly focused on one thing when it comes to quality and their work. They're talking about requirements. Testers, those are the Calimeros of the software industry. You know Calimero? I am big and they are small. The small widget. Well, a tester is always complaining about requirements. The requirements are not good. The requirements are changing. The requirements are incomplete. The requirements are not well documented. I don't have versions of my requirements. Blah, 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 always complaining. Well, I do agree as tester that requirements, and whether it's in a V model or a waterfall model or in agile user stories, these are important. These are the cornerstones of our profession. We build upon those. But there's one thing that is also important. Requirements need to be smart. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound. We all know that. And believe me, analysts also know that. They're not creating bad requirements because they like that. They're creating bad requirements or not good requirements, not ideal requirements, because requirements are very expensive. It takes a lot of time and a lot of money to get good requirements. And sometimes good is good enough. And we have to accept it as tester. If you aim for the perfect requirements, then be also aware that you will start your testing weeks, months, decades later, just to fine-tune those requirements. Because in the end, when you develop software, it comes down to two things. To find a balance, an equilibrium between what the business, your user, is willing to pay for the quality that you try for, and what you have to invest in that quality. What you need to do for that. You might want to have more quality than there's currently in the product, but then you need to find a sponsor for that. Somebody that supports that idea. Now, if you want to find that balance, how can you do that? How to determine how much your company should invest in quality? Well, one way of doing that is what we all know. Risk-based testing. Risk and requirement-based testing. There was an excellent presentation on that today. Well, that's a good idea. It takes the perception that we have two axes. We have the likelihood. What is the chance that a problem might occur in production if we don't test? And we have the impact. If something happens, what is the cost? In money, in human life, in marketing, in whatever kind of way. It's quite clear that for all these features and requirements with a high likelihood of failing, and if they fail with a high cost, these are the high priority ones. These are the ones we should test first. The ones who are at the bottom left corner, with a very low impact and a very low likelihood of occurring, well, these are not the ones we should invest in the first place. We all know that this is the way we have been working, or at least we should be working, for 10, 15, 20 years. This is not something new. But I can guarantee you, if next Monday you have a new release and you have a bunch of testers sitting there, They all know that they should start with the high priority test cases, requirements. What do they start with? With the login field, entering all kinds of dummy data, wrong characters, SQL injections, the easy tests. And why is that? Because that delivers value quite quickly. Because they get a good feeling. They make a lot of progress. Hey, I have to execute 100 test cases, and on 5 hours' time, I've already done 40 of them. Not the high priority ones, but at least I make progress. So we know this, but we do not necessarily respond to it. And when you work in such a model like that, and even if you respect this model, there's one pitfall to it. If you let yourself be guided by likelihood and impact, you are thinking of risks. And thinking of risks is being afraid. If Columbus would have made an estimation of likelihood of impact of reaching America, he would have not have set sail. It's only by taking risks that you invent new things. So as a company, if you decide for every feature, I'm going to use this model, I'm fairly certain that there will not be a next new thing for your company in the pipeline. So risks can be a good idea, but what is a better way to determine that quality investment? Let me introduce you Professor Noriyako Kano, known from the Kano model. And to see what he has to say, suppose tomorrow your boss gives you a call and he says, I have a very good news for you. You can order a brand new company car. And you can compose your car yourself. What would be the requirements for that car? And then you have all kinds of crazy ideas. I need leather seating. I need heated chairs. I need power steering. I need a GPS system. I need a CD player. I want Bluetooth. I want automatic parking. I want it to be able to fly. Whatever. These are all good requirements, but they forget one basic thing. What a car is. And that's also what makes our life as a tester so difficult. You get to blame that in production something doesn't work as predicted, and then you say, okay, but it was nowhere in the requirements. Yeah, but you should know because you know our business. The Kano model, make sure you will not forget those, because the Kano model uses two axes. The axis of degree of fulfillment and the happiness of the customer. And you can classify the requirements in 3 different categories. The first category is called the dissatisfiers. These are the basic factors. What is a dissatisfier? These are the basic factors. If they are not respected, if your product lacks those, then people will not buy your product. If I tell you that I will offer you a brand new car, but the car doesn't have an engine, it doesn't drive, it doesn't have a steering wheel, it doesn't have wheels, then it's not a car. But as testers, this is what we often forget. We don't have that information, or these are our implicit requirements. So if we have all of those, we will be a little bit happy, but it will not be a top-notch product. The second type of requirements are the satisfiers. And the satisfiers are the options on your car. The more you have of those, the happier you will be. I have a GPS, I have power steering, I have automatic parking, I have traffic collision, whatever. So the more you have of those, the happier you will be. And the third and final category are the delighters. And the delighters, those are the aha-erlebnis, the eureka moments. An enlighter is, or a delighter is, what makes people stand in line for hours or days to wait for a new product. The new iPhone comes out, well, I'm waiting 2 days in ahead. The new World of Warcraft comes out, I'm going to wait for it, because it has something that I want. These are the requirements which are unconscious. The company knows something, that you need something, that you don't know that you need it. What is the trick with that? That means that you have to be a visionary for it. You do not know that you want it, but you will create it. Ford, the builder of the Ford car, said, when he created the first Model T, if I had asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said, I want a faster horse. And what he did, he extrapolated that. He said, we don't need a faster horse nor a faster carriage. I'm going to create a faster means of transportation. He created his own market. And that's the way to classify things. Your product, in order to deliver quality, should have all these satisfiers, because otherwise you don't have a product, should have some satisfier, and ideally, depending on your audience, should have one or multiple delighters. That is one way of classifying things. But how can you then make your decisions about that quality next to that classification? And I present you a very handsome-looking guy. That is Karl Wiegers. Karl Wiegers is a German engineer, and he created a model of determining and prioritizing your quality investment. And what's the Wiegers model? Well, Wiegers model starts with defining your requirements, eliciting your requirements. With one pitfall, or with one side note, that if you have requirements which are absolutely mandatory, there is a legal obligation, there's a contractual obligation that you should have some features, then you do not prioritize those, because you have to build those. You only talk about the things that you can prioritize, that you can choose. So step one, we're going to determine the requirements, and here we have some requirements. We have our company websites, and we have 5 major requirements. We have a new registration module where people can log on, log off. We're going to update the content of our website, so the content itself. We want some fancy social media Facebook integration because we don't have it right now and it's really suffering. We have to migrate all our customers because we are creating a new registration module. We have new tables and fields that we need to comply to. And we're going to create a brand new look and feel for our website to make it much more 2016 to 2017. That's step one, 5 requirements, easy project. Now, how are you going to determine the priorities between those requirements? Well, step 2 is to calculate the benefit. You're going to interview the stakeholders, in this case the business, and ask them what is the benefit of each of these features. How much is your user willing to pay extra if we deliver such a feature? What you see then is that a lot of customers are asking for the new look and feel. If we provide that, they're willing to pay a lot of money for our website. The registration module, well, in fact, nobody's waiting for that. So even if we deliver that, they're not fairly interested in that. That is one way of calculating that. The second thing, closely related to it, is the penalty. The penalty is, will our company suffer if we do not deliver this feature? Here you see that we have a high penalty if we do not update our content. Our business, our customers, are eager to receive new information, new content, new pages. On the other hand, they're not waiting for a customer migration or registration module. Now, if you calculate the two together, so you add the penalty to the benefit, you calculate the value. What is the total business value of each of these requirements? And then you see in this case, an registration module almost delivers no value. Nobody's willing to pay for it, and people will not run away if we don't have it. But on the other hand, the update of the content will deliver the highest value. So for the business, it's quite clear. The main focus, the first thing we need to develop and test is an update of the content. And all the rest comes in the second place. Now, Wiegers goes further than that. Okay, he calculates the relative value in a percentage. That's always handy, because managers do like percentages and graphs. But step 6 goes further. Step 6 talks about the cost of each feature. The development cost, the analysis cost, the testing cost, the production cost, the training cost. So next to interviewing the stakeholders for penalty and for benefit, now we ask all the stakeholders, the analysts, the developers, the tester, what would it cost in terms of man days, in terms of tooling, relatively to each other. And then you see that an update of the registration module, the creation of a registration module, has almost no cost. Well, maybe for another project we already created a registration model and we just have to plug it in. That is possible. And you can see also that the update of the content comes at a high cost. Well, we have to write all that content, so that takes a lot of time. You can then calculate the cost percentage. That's the relative cost divided by the total cost. Again, management percentages. And the final task is now to assess the relative risk. the risk associated with each of these requirements. Hey, here we come back to risk and requirement-based testing. So risks are not forgotten, but these are one of the factors. And then you can see that our risk for a new registration module is very limited. Again, it can be something that we have on the shelf that is already in production for another project, or that we can copy-paste from Google or from Stack Exchange. And you also see that the customer migration is very risky. We have millions of customers in our customer database. If something goes wrong with that migration script, we lose all their data and there's no way back. So that's very risky. And then you come again, manage and talk, step 9, to the risk percentage. Now, these 9 steps are a prerequisite to come to the conclusion of vigorous model. For vigorous, the priority is dependent on both the value, and value is the sum of benefit and penalty, of the cost and of the risk. He will divide the total value by the cost plus the risk. And what does it come down to then? Then you can see that a registration module all of a sudden becomes important. And the Facebook integration, the word I have not said in neither of the assessment, is now the top priority. How's that? Well, you can see that the Facebook integration delivers a rather high value, not the highest, but a rather high, a medium cost, a rather low risk. So that means that if you take the balance between those, it comes to the highest priority. This is the thing we should start with. And the customer migration, the thing which was very difficult to do, but that a lot of customers are willing to do, that's the lowest priority. Even though that it's the riskiest thing. This is not the first thing we will do. What makes this model special is that it makes you think about new opportunities. If you ask developers what is the first thing you would like to develop, or at testers what is the first thing you would like to test, most of you would have said the customer migration. It's the riskiest thing, that is where we start with. That is risk-based testing. If you ask the business where to start with, it's the highest value. It's the update of the content. Well, this model merges the two of those. So it brings you a benefit to that. Does it mean that it's a single and only truth? No. There are other models, and you should always customize any model to your needs. You can, for example, put a weighting in that you say, okay, for our company, the value is twice as important as the cost. That's possible. Or the cost is half as important as the risk. So you can put weightings, you can adapt this model as much as you want. To summarize this, what should you remember from this presentation? What is the key takeaway before you head off home? Well, if you acquire better prioritization, meaning you use the Kano model, or your own model, or the vigorous model, you will get higher quality. Because quality is contextual, and the only quality that counts is the quality that you deliver to your end customer. And if you deliver higher quality, you will have happier customers. And that is what we're all doing for. That's the conclusion. Thank you very much.
Time for one question. Only one. Okay, thank you for presentation. It was really awesome. So I would like to ask where could we find more details about this approach? Because we want to see some details and maybe, or it is your personally.
No, it's not something I invented.
Yeah.
It's in literature. So if you take a look, because the PowerPoint is also downloadable on the website, I think. Certainly for the vigorous model, you see his name right here.
Okay.
So if you do a Google search.
What his book, he has a few?
He has created a book. He also created Excel templates that can use for interviewing your stakeholders, filling in the values, putting the weightings there that you automatically calculate it.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
So that is possible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very
You're welcome.
much.